We begin a packed hour with the headline that jolted South Florida vaccination efforts this week as the CDC suspended use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
The number of people vaccinated in Florida was down sharply in the last week. What is the Biden administration going to do to bring it back up? And what about the governor? What will he do? And then what is the president going to do to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill? He promised he would take action on day one, but he has done little more than denounce the epidemic of gun violence.
We have a lot to talk about with Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat from Weston. Good morning to you. And Congresswoman, before we begin, condolences on the passing of your mother a few weeks ago. Our hearts are with the Wasserman and Schultz families. We are so sorry to hear that. I met her at the airport once in Washington, a lovely woman.
Yeah, blessed in memory. We give you our heartfelt condolences, Congresswoman.
Appreciate that so much. Thank you both.
Let's begin here with the pause in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Clearly, that had a lot to do with the fact vaccinations in the state of Florida were down 35% in the last week. And the goal of getting to 80% where there is herd immunity, I mean, something has to be done. What do you think the governor or the Biden administration should do to get the demand for vaccines back up again?
Well, I think it was an important step for the CDC to take, given that you have 6 people who ended up with life-threatening clots that really needed to be reviewed. And so the pause makes a lot of sense. I heard this morning from Dr. Fauci during his round of interviews on morning television that they expect that by Friday that likely they will be able to lift that pause. And, you know, look, at the end of the day, they've kept on stressing that this is an extremely rare situation, but one that needed to be reviewed. You literally have 6 people out of nearly 7 million who have been vaccinated. So making sure that we can boost vaccine confidence, not deteriorate it, is really important. But I expect that it'll only be a few more days and we'll be back up and running with the Johnson & Johnson vaccines.
You know, next in this program, Congresswoman will be talking to FIU epidemiologist Eileen Marty. So we'll get into the science of what happened with J&J. Staying on the vaccine themed for just a moment, you wrote a letter to the governor this week, you and some others, asking him to relax the requirements for undocumented citizens among us and also for the seasonal workers. What kind of response have you gotten for that? Because that's a significant number of people in South Florida who may not have access to any vaccine at the moment.
Well, unsurprisingly, we haven't gotten any response from the governor because he has been grossly irresponsible in the way he has implemented anything related to this entire pandemic, including vaccinations, where he has vaccinated the prioritized wealthy white people as opposed to making sure that we can distribute the vaccine evenly and equally.
Can I just say, because there is no one here to defend that, I just want to say that the governor categorically denies that and was focused on seniors.
Let me just finish what I was saying. You can ask someone else for their response, but as I said, he has grossly irresponsibly handled the entire pandemic, whether it was in the beginning delaying, making sure that we could pause the circulation of people and refusing to acknowledge that we actually had community spread. People forget about that. It was so long ago, all the way to now where he has been very, very much favoring wealthy white communities. That's consistent. It's been in the process of being investigated. It's been criticized. And so now, and look, I agree that in the beginning we had vaccine tourism taking place here. And I know when I was volunteering at vaccine sites, there were people that were online that were not from the state of Florida. And so we needed to make sure that we got a handle on that. So the doses that come to Florida were, while they were very sparse, got into the arms of Floridians. But now we have so many vaccines that you don't even need an appointment. And making sure that we can vaccinate the vulnerable, making sure we can vaccinate farm workers and immigrants to this country. You know, residency is understandable, but there are lots of ways to identify that you reside in the state of Florida, and we've asked the governor to relax those requirements. We also sent a letter to FEMA and to the to Secretary Becerra, because we asked at the federal sites, at the FEMA sites, that they relax those, and they don't have to go through Governor DeSantis to do that. Yeah. I'm hopeful that President Biden and the federal government will actually be responsive. I don't expect Governor DeSantis to start caring about equal distribution of helping people make sure that they get vaccines in their arms.
Yeah. Congresswoman, talking about sending messages, letters to the governor, you and Representatives Lois Frankel, Ted Deutsch, this week, as it were, sent a letter to him and said, please call a special election, set a date for an election in the 20th Congressional District to replace the late Alcee Hastings. Have you heard back from him on that?
No, of course not. And I will tell you that after my own devastating personal loss of my mom, 4 days later, we lost Alcee Hastings, who was one of my mentors and an incredible civil rights and community and national and international leader. And his constituents in Florida's 20th District deserve a swift call for a special election so that we can make sure that they have a representative being their voice and not have the gaping void that the loss of Alcee Hastings leaves. We are about to go through the appropriations process. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. We need to make sure that throughout that process, and also when we do the infrastructure bill, when we have further COVID relief, that the needs of his constituents are represented by someone they elect. It's been 12 days. The last time we had a special election, Rick Scott called a special election in 13 days. I am hopeful and urging Governor DeSantis, as our delegation is, to call this election beginning tomorrow, no later than tomorrow.
In anticipation of this coming up, because like everything that we discuss, it's politics sort of is the overarching theme, but there in the past 20 years, the special elections that needed to be called in Florida to replace either someone who had passed in office or who resigned, the average has been 3 to 5 months. Do you expect that 3 to 5 months will be an acceptable time frame?
Well, that's not how long it's taken to call the election. That's part of the problem, Glenna. In fact, Charlie Crist called the special election to replace Robert Wexler within 21 days. And because our special election process has to go through a qualifying period, then a primary, then a general election, and there needs to be a period of time for each of those to occur, it already takes a pretty long time just to go through the elections process. So calling the election swiftly, scheduling it so that whole process can unfold is essential, because who wouldn't, if you represent the constituents of the state of Florida, who wouldn't want to make sure we have our full complement of our 27-member strong congressional delegation? Leaving 800,000 people unrepresented is irresponsible, and also it means that we struggle more to bring resources home to our state. Yeah. So Governor DeSantis needs to get on the stick and call this special election this week.
Yeah, very, very briefly, Congresswoman, it has been your practice over the years not to endorse in a Democratic primary. We've already seen 5 or 6 politicians in both Palm Beach and Broward counties who have already said they want to run for that seat. Are you going to kind of hold an endorsement until there is a nominee?
Yes, that's my plan. I know I would be proud to work with any of the individuals that have thrown their hat into the ring. We have a lot of really well-qualified people who have expressed interest in I know they would all agree that those are giant shoes that really aren't fillable, but we need to make sure that I know I have to work with whoever gets elected and look forward to working with whoever gets elected, but I won't be making an endorsement in this race.
Congresswoman, sit tight if you would. We'll take a quick break and be right back in 2 minutes.
On this Sunday morning, on This Week in South Florida, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, we are so glad you are with us. Let me bring up a topic we have gone over in the past, because Gabby Giffords was and remains your very close friend, almost killed by a deranged gunman. Here this week, obviously, in Indianapolis, yet another instance of mass shooting. So I just feel compelled to ask you, will Congress ever do anything serious to take guns out of the hands of people who are mentally ill or those who, have obvious criminal records?
Well, Michael, like my dear friend Gabby, I remain optimistic and hopeful. We passed the universal background check bill out of the House already. We passed the Charleston loophole bill out of the House already. Thankfully, President Biden has taken some action through executive order, and we need the Senate to act. But look, you do need to let's look at the progress we've made. The NRA is essentially a nearly neutered organization. They've filed bankruptcy. Their influence has waned. Organizations like Gabby's through Giffords have all across the country passed and made progress at the state level in making sure that we can keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. We need to pass Jamie's Law, which I'll be reintroducing, to enforce federal law that says that you need to do background checks for when you are purchasing ammunition. But we have a long way to go. I mean, 45 mass shootings, I think, in the last month. Every single day there is a mass shooting in this country, sometimes more than one. And we clearly have a lot of work to do. And we need to just keep pushing harder and be relentless, just like Gabby is.
Among those executive actions that the president had taken, he recommends those red flag laws to be a national model. We have them in Florida largely thanks to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission and the families. But what's interesting about this latest mass shooting that we're all watching at the Federal Express facility is that those laws that are in place right now should have prevented that young man from having a weapon, and yet something fell through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what it looked like was that a red flag law actually confiscated a weapon that he had when his mother reported her concern about a year ago. But then, if you don't stay on top of and monitor someone who has had that mental illness and had a red flag law enacted on them, that he should have been flagged and not been able to purchase or get access to an additional weapon. So the investigation, I know, is ongoing, but he did have a weapon confiscated, just clearly not the one that he used to commit that horrific mass murder.
Yeah. Congresswoman, let me change the focus here and let's look at immigration for a minute. It has been a concern of yours. Particularly, let's look at refugees. These are people who,
Yes.
have already been vetted. Thousands of them are sitting, waiting to come get a plane ticket, come to the United States. People who were translators who helped the American troops in Afghanistan or Iraq. And the president had said in the campaign he's going to open up the floodgates, let in maybe 62,000. Then this week he pulled back and said, no, we're going to keep it at 15,000 like President Trump, and then changed his mind. So where does it stand, and what would you like to see happen here?
Well, I'm thankful that President Biden said that by May they will raise the cap, and we're looking forward to that. It's important to remember that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller completely dismantled our functioning immigration system. And so rebuilding it and making sure that we can reestablish ourselves as the beacon of freedom across the world is critical. The crisis at the border should not be conflated with the annual number of refugees that we take in from around the world. And we actually have fully funded the 62,500 refugee cap that we need to restore it to be able to make sure that countries where are torn by violence are able to have their refugees come to this country with a lifted cap from 15,000 to 62,500. We have the resources to do that. That's already funded. And it's also, what I've heard, though, Michael, is that some of the resources for the refugee program are being used at the border. And as an appropriator, if the administration needs more resources, all they need to do is let us know, because we need to make sure that we can provide resources to manage both immigration situations.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, always great to have you here. Thanks for the wide-ranging conversation. More to come, and take care.
Thanks so much, Congresswoman.